AJ, if you could sum up John Wick in one word, how would you describe it?
Yeah.
Yeah. John Wick is probably the best action franchise of the last decade, I'd say. Maybe last 2 decades.
I would keep going back. Go back further.
I don't know if I can go back further, because then we're getting into Terminator, and I don't know if I want to start blurring any lines here. They're very different kinds of action movies, but I think overall, John Wick, it's definitely, since the year 2000, it's the best action movie franchise. Hands down. And the fourth one just recently released. Let's talk about that.
It has set a new bar. And the problem is that now other movies are going to have to compete with the action in this film.
Yeah, there ain't no way.
I don't know how they're going to do that.
I don't think there's any way that any new action movies can compete.
And it's important to note that, I don't know if you guys knew this, but the director of all 4 films, he's a stunt man. Like, that's his normal job.
Yeah, I think he was a stuntman in The Matrix.
Yeah, that was his original job before he started
He's
being
known
a director.
Keanu for, like, a while.
Well, yeah, if they worked together on The Matrix, that was an early 2000s movie. They would have known each other since then.
It was 99.
Oh, wow.
Take the L.
I was wrong.
Take the L. Doesn't even know what decade The Matrix came out in.
I'm going to be honest with you guys. I've never even seen The Matrix.
Wow. Guess what?
I
haven't either.
almost spit his water out. Jesus.
Tell me you're joking.
I haven't either.
I'm not joking. I've never seen The Matrix.
I haven't seen The
Never
Matrix
seen
either.
The Matrix.
No.
We're watching that tonight.
We're not watching that tonight.
We're watching that tonight.
We're finishing.
We should watch it soon.
Oh my god. There's no. I don't even know if I want to be in this room
all right,
anymore.
we'll start the Matrix movie soon. We just finished watching all the John Wick movies in order, leading up to the 4th movie. That's what we're here to talk about. All right, we're not here to talk about the Matrix. We're not here for anyone to point fingers at anyone. Nobody gets crucified. We're here to talk about John Wick, the best action franchise. Here's the thing: is like the Matrix. I'm excited to see it, but like, is it even going to be as good as John Wick? Really?
It is.
The
first one is
good?
The first one.
The first Matrix.
The first Matrix is as good as John Wick.
The thing is with all the John Wick movies, though, is they're all just so consistently just.
Okay.
They never dip in quality.
In terms of the franchise in and of itself,
it's the best.
The John Wick movies are way more consistent. The Matrix is the first Matrix is the first one. That one's almost untouched. Probably like top. That's like a top 20 most influential movies of all time. The ones after that, the dip is very noticeable, extremely noticeable.
That's what I heard.
I haven't seen the recent one, the one that came out in like 2020, because apparently that was awful. Not even counting that, because that came out like 20 years after. Yeah. Not even counting that. The first 3, some people really hate the second 2, but I think it's just because of how good the first one is that the second 2 just aren't even close. They're not even terrible. They're just not even close to as good, so people hate on them. But I don't even want to talk about the Matrix. Welcome back, everybody. This has been a long intro to the podcast.
Welcome back.
Jack, welcome. He's here.
Everybody.
I'm here.
Woo!
Welcome, Jack.
Congratulations.
I am back on. It's a pleasure
Welcome
to be
back.
here.
He was supposed to see John Wick 4 with us, but instead he saw it 2 days later by himself because he missed the showtime.
I want to preface this
not by
saying,
myself. You guys or AJ called me when he was at the theater, and I literally was just regaining consciousness. And I live pretty far from where we went to, or the way I would take. We were pretty far from where you guys were going to see it. So I was just like...
Where we all were going to see it.
Yep. I literally, like, as you called me, I was literally entering consciousness. And I felt so bad. Here I was just at home, and I was like...
Yes. So we saw an IMAX, and the IMAX theater is not close to where we live. And honestly, the night before, or the day before, I had gotten food poisoning. So I had thrown up about 20 times the previous day. But I got up. That is what happened. I don't know why you're laughing. That is an accurate summation of what happened. But even though I was fighting for my life that morning, I still got up to see John Wick, unlike Jack.
Yeah, AJ was really sick off that food poisoning, all that food we ate. But I won't lie to you. You were up on time to see John Wick. You definitely weren't feeling good, but you made it to the movie, and that's what counts.
I have to be honest. That movie did something. I felt terrible that morning. I went got into that movie there, sat down, and then the moment the movie started, because we, obviously preface with the spoilers. You haven't seen the movie. There's no point watching this. The moment he starts punching the punching bag, that sound, it cued something in my brain, and then for almost 3 hours, I was as engaged as I've ever been with any movie. and I didn't feel a thing. My stomach was perfectly calm. After the movie, I felt terrible again. But during that entire movie, during that 3-hour stretch, I didn't even notice my stomach.
You heard it here first, folks. John Wick heals the sick.
It cures you.
It does.
Watch that movie, and for whatever time you're watching it, you won't notice anything else. Guaranteed.
That's true. I didn't even when I watched it because I also saw it in IMAX, and I haven't seen anything in IMAX in forever.
This was my first ever movie in IMAX, and it was
really?
the perfect.
Oh,
movie.
It was perfect. It was a different experience, and it was just so good. I remember in the starting scene when there's that punch, and I heard like the giant like boom. I was just like, any thoughts outside the movie, what I had to do later, what I did earlier in my day, and stuff like that, they were just gone, and my attention was just there.
No, that's part of the reason this movie is perfect. It's just because it hits you immediately. It doesn't like baby step you or like, hold your hand. It's like nothing. Like the moment the movie starts, it is like buckle up.
Oh yeah, I mean it picks up right off of the third movie. It starts like more or less right where we left off.
There's a bit of a time.
John
jump.
Wick and King
no,
are
there's a bit of a timing jump.
Well, a little bit, but not much. I mean, the big jump is when he goes to Arabia.
Yeah,
Like,
that's a big jump.
No. Like after he'd been punching, there's a big time gap between 3 and 4.
yeah,
But he's just been training the whole time.
Yeah,
right?
I figured there was a time gap, but it still picks up more or less where we left off in the fourth one with John and King are here, and they're pissed.
Basically,
John is not a happy boy after Winston betrayed him, and King is not a happy boy after the table showed up and made him a bitch.
They turned him into Swiss cheese.
So now it's time to get revenge, and revenge is the name of the game with John Wick, and this fourth one does not disappoint, man.
Oh, not at all.
it's hard to describe this movie if you haven't seen it because, again, like when you're watching the certain fight scenes, it's like part of you's thinking, how did they make this? And also the other half of you is like, that's the coolest thing I've ever watched in a movie.
Yeah, I have to say, probably my favorite scene in the movie is there's like a 360-degree rotating action shot of basically a whole entire floor layout of a building with Dragon's Breath shotgun rounds. So you see fire shooting out of the shotgun as there's this big spinning rotating shot where you can see all the other rooms and you can see the fire.
It's like a top-down angle.
Yeah, it's a top-down angle, and it's perfect. It's the perfect action scene. Like, it's so cool seeing these guys that really think they have a chance against him as he just rips through them, like, effortlessly.
I found a whole article talking about how they filmed that. It took them 3 days for that one shot.
I bet actually.
3 days.
I believe it.
I can't imagine how complex it must have been to build the camera mount and the set for that.
Well, especially when when he's getting into
Again,
the shot.
also all of that is one take too. They didn't do any cuts. They had to get that perfect take. That takes 3 days.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the one takes pay off. Just like in the Arc de Triomphe battle, there's a scene where there's a big sort of hybrid car and on the ground fight with guns at the Arc de Triomphe in France, in Paris, and there's a long take where it's like he does 4 or 5 donuts around that group of cars shooting at them. It doesn't stop. That's one take.
I feel like in this movie, honestly, more than any of the others, they actually give a lot of these fights room to breathe. They don't stop them prematurely, even though it feels like some of them they might go on for a little while. They're really I honestly appreciate it in a way because they don't just stop where a lot of movies will do very quick action, very fast paced. They'll do a lot of edits, a lot of really quick cuts. This movie they give the fight scenes room to breathe, and they let you just kind of take it all in.
Versus... Well, they let you see it.
Exactly.
You get to really see it. I mean, even when it gets down to the nitty gritty, John just beating the hell out of some guys, no guns or anything. And it's good. It's a very good movie. I mean, the action is top notch. The acting is great. And for an action movie, not that I'm calling it the best story in the whole entire world, it's got a pretty good, easy to follow compelling story. And this fourth one's great because it jumps all over the world. I mean, it starts
in Japan.
It starts in New York City, and then they kind of do some scenes in Arabia where they show you the elder of the whole, the man who sits above the table, and then you get to see some scenes in Japan while he's being hunted, and then he finally turns it against the table and goes to France. You get action in 4
it goes everywhere.
And the third movie's the one that has Morocco in it. I'm sorry.
Morocco? That
is it not Morocco?
I think that's the third movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that is
no,
the
no,
third
no. I
one.
was saying that. I was getting confused there on
Yeah,
on the
it's the
location.
third one.
Because I mean, the guy just travels so much. The movies take place all over the world.
True, but honestly, this movie is the one where New York is featured the least.
That's
true.
I don't even think he does
Yeah.
any like. I think it was a couple fights at the beginning are in New York, and the rest are all.
Yeah,
It's really in France and Japan is where
And
a lot of
Germany.
the fights. Oh yeah, and Germany
because
too.
what are they called? The Belarus organization is
Yeah.
stationed in Germany. That's where he meets up with them.
Yeah, is the
Ruska
Ruska,
Ruska
Roma.
Roma.
Yeah, it's honestly again. There's three main like fight areas in it. Again, it's Osaka, Berlin, and Paris. Like those are the
Yeah.
three main ones. And I did appreciate New York. Oh. Silly dog.
He's just making some noise,
He's just scratching himself. Hi, buddy.
letting us know he's here.
But honestly, like I appreciate New York not being the face of this movie because New York was the face of pretty much the entirety of John Wick 2 and 3.
All the movies, really. The
Even
first three.
pretty much the first three were all based in New York with a couple like they went to Morocco for this one part. He went to the
Whoa, Halle Berry's in that part.
that's what I was just talking about.
I know. I was gonna say, don't just say, oh, they go to Morocco. Halle Berry's there.
Halle Berry and Keanu. They go to that part, and then they go to Arabia for a little bit in the third movie. But pretty much all of it. And that's true. In the second one, they go to
Italy.
Rome. They go to Italy.
Rome.
Yeah, a
But-
lot of the second one is there.
But obviously, like New York is the central. Honestly, it's almost treated as like a character. At the beginning of this film, they're like when they go and they blow up the Continental, they're almost like signaling like, yeah, New York's dead. We killed it.
Or like, we're not going to New York. This movie isn't gonna.
Because the high table is basically signaling to John Wick. It's like, yeah, like New York is almost like a character in this, what do you call it, quadrilogy? And
yeah,
they're like, we're
yeah.
killing New York as punishment for everything you've done.
Well, and it's not just like they're killing New York. It's like they're telling John that it's not safe. You know, it's
Exactly.
like you can't be here. You know,
They
it's
kill-
not- and, you know, the Continental Hotel isn't even safe. You're not safe here. So
They
he's
kill
gotta leave.
everyone. They kill Carrion. That's how you say his name, right? It's Carrion.
I thought it was Caron.
Corone. I've heard it. I feel like I've heard it pronounced both ways. However, it is Corone. They kill him, and dude, that hurt watching that.
That was
Honestly,
sad.
Well, I mean, for it being
of all the deaths
I-
in
I
that
do-
movie, that
I-
one might have hurt the most.
Well, okay, we should probably say that is that not Lance Reddick's last appearance, or he will be in the he'll be in the Ballerina.
Yeah, he will be in the Ballerina movie next year, which is a spin-off, and that takes place between 3 and 4.
Yeah, but I mean, for a final John Wick appearance, dude, and I mean, spoiler alert, if you've listened this far and you're still ignoring the fact that we told you that this is a spoiler episode, you know, he dies very early on. He gets killed,
And
it's the most heartbreaking scene in the movie. For it to happen, I mean, so soon after the actor Lance Reddick passed away, it really like. I don't know, that death in the movie kind of sat very heavy with me for the remainder of the film.
I could tell when I went to go see it. There's like, because this movie, and just period, did a lot. It like got the audience. You could tell they felt like something with like all the scenes. Like there was like applause and everything. But when this happened, I could just tell the room, just kind of the whole atmosphere and just how I could sense how everyone was feeling. It just shifted, and it was just like, wow. You know, both because obviously the character was very meaningful, great supporting character, but also because of Lance's passing.
Yeah, honestly, when this, if he hadn't died before this, it still would have been very impactful. But
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean he was my favorite side character.
Yeah,
for the
but-
last
Oh,
three.
me too.
but
100%.
obviously, you can't ignore the fact that like knowing that this is his last major role. We don't know how big his role will be in the next movie. It's probably just gonna be a cameo, for being honest. But knowing that this is probably his last main film, last main role, it adds an extra element that you really can't ignore. And I think honestly makes his death like way more impactful.
Yeah, well, and his death
For
is
sure.
it's so sudden and abrupt. Like it doesn't, you know, like they're talking there, and it seems very much implied that Winston's about to get killed because of his helping John.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, the French guy, he's like, oh, well, then you don't need a concierge anymore, and he shoots him just like right there. He just pulls out a gun and shoots him.
Well,
It
also, I could totally see him wanting to shoot him instead of Winston because what's his name spoke up and like said like if I could like just say, and I was kind of because the Marquis, he's such a presence, and he has like when you walk in the room like he has the floor.
Yeah.
And him like coming being like, actually, can I say something? I just knew like if someone's getting shot here, it's gonna be him.
Yeah, I have to say, yeah, with the villain now moving into the marquee, he really does. Of all the villains, I think maybe with the exception of the first movie with the Russian mob, he holds such an on-screen presence.
Well, that's why it's really smart to make him be the one to kill him.
Well, because for a long time, not for a long time, most of the movie I was like, I don't know that I like this villain as much as the Japanese guy in the third movie, or I mean the first movie's different. That movie's just a whole different breed with the villain because John really has a reason to hate them. But
For sure.
For him, I was like, I don't know that I really like him as much. But as the movie went on, and as you see more of him, like talking with Winston and like being this like conniving piece of shit asshole villain, it really I don't know, because he grabs your attention as soon as you see the scenes he's in, and he commands it like he's.
I think the reason he's such an impactful villain in this franchise in particular, because I agree that honestly, John Wick 1 has a different feel than the other three to me.
Oh,
it's kind of like its own film, because when they made that film, they didn't really have intentions of making more.
Well, I mean, John Wick 1 is lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
That you can't recapture that. It's I would say it's almost the perfect action movie.
Yeah, but everything from the way the film's shot, the color palette, even the cinematography, it doesn't really feel the same as the other three. The other three do feel a little more similar, because again, when they made one, they weren't really planning on making the other one, so the villain is a lot more contained. But I think they really picked the perfect villain. First of all, the performance by, is it Stellan Skarsgård? I know it's a Skarsgård because it's really famous.
Is it Bill? I thought it was like Bill or Ben.
Oh, you're right, it's Bill. Sorry, Stellan's is dead. I'm getting all confused. It's Bill Skarsgård. His performance, particularly because he's not French and he's Swedish, I think is hilarious that he plays like the perfect French guy. And then also, the main reason he's the perfect villain is because he basically encompasses everything that John hates.
Yeah.
He is the entire high table thrown into one person. He dresses like an asshole. He is like the super rich douchebag guy where he overdresses. The way he talks is every person he talks to, he talks down to.
Yeah, and I mean, that's part of what adds to that presence on screen is like, I feel like this villain, the Marquis, is like, he's the only one that can hold that same presence on screen that John does, that Keanu Reeves does when you see him in every single scene that he's John Wick. I mean, he just commands the stage when he's there. He just has that physical presence on the screen, and this villain can kind of match that, and it's almost like he's the flashy asshole, overconfident version of John, whereas John is the more humble, I guess the word I'm looking for is lost on me. Thoughtful, I guess. He's much more. He's not as much of a loudmouth as the Marquis is. He's more of a reserved, action-driven man, where this guy is the opposite, but holds the same presence on screen.
So, like with the Marquis, I remember I think the thing that really showed me that he was kind of like another step up, not just like, oh, this villain that has to be here for the movie, but like more than that, was when nobody comes to him, or Tracker or whatever he was, comes in and is like talking to him about how he wants to track and they are going to make this deal.
Oh, you mean nobody?
Nobody, yeah. And he's kind of just sitting there, hands in his pockets, brows furrowed, kind of like, this guy who is nobody is completely wasting my time. And it just shows like, this is someone who's so important that he really, really is irritated by having like his time wasted. You can tell that he's like this with a lot of people, even people who have power, like within the Wickiverse, right, in this movie. So I can,
Wickiverse.
That's what it's called. No, that's what it's being dubbed that. Like that's not, I didn't make that up.
That's pretty funny though.
But like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, there's something about his like body language that really signaled to me that this is something wrong with my mic.
Oh yeah, I mean the actor just nails it. He performs perfectly. I mean he does the job exactly. I think
it's hilarious that he went from being the clown to this. I'm sure he does other stuff. Those are his most famous roles.
That's true.
He killed it in this movie.
He did. He really did kill it in this movie.
I think the other thing
as the villain, I mean, I hated him every time I saw him. Every time I saw him, I was like, this asshole again.
His death was so satisfying.
His death was very. His
I-
death was.
Winston
very
put it
satisfying.
perfectly. You arrogant asshole. He didn't shoot yet.
That's not what it is.
That's what he says.
No, he goes rules, and then John goes and consequences and shoots him.
It shoots him
That
directly
is the
in
best
head.
part.
Rules and
That's the best
consequences.
part
I
because
remember.
if there's one line to define that whole entire franchise, that's it. Rules and consequences. That's the
true.
whole entire epitome of John Wick. That's what it is.
I
And
remember.
for it to be wrapped up in a nice little bow that way, and I mean, I honestly I don't even want to spoil the ending, but the way it ends.
What do you mean? Anyone who's watching this far,
No,
We're
I know,
already-
but
we're
I
already
don't
basically
want
spoiling it,
to
too.
talk about it. We're only 20 minutes in.
we're gonna talk about the ending.
Yeah,
Well-
we'll get there. We're not at the end yet.
I remember
end.
when the Marquise got killed too. Everyone in the front row stood up, started clapping. Like it was
Oh
like
my
we were
God.
actually
Really?
watching a play.
White people at
Jack-
the movie
Jack-
theater. Woohoo!
Jack-
Movie's over.
No, literally,
Jack
everyone in the
skipping
theater
the movie
was
with us
clapping.
and going to the whitest theater in America.
The whitest theater in
I went to
America.
the same theater as
Woohoo!
you.
The movie's over, guys.
You must not have because nobody clapped.
No,
in the
I don't think a
theater.
single person clapped
no,
at our theater.
literally, there were a ton of people in the front row. They're just clapping, and I was just like, "Wow, this has never happened to me in a movie theater." I can tell this movie resonates differently than a lot of other movies I've seen with people. Well,
What do you guys want to talk about next with John Wick? I mean, do you want to stick with John Wick or do you want to change it up?
I have one more point I want to talk about the Marquis. Is that part of the reason I think he's so impactful is that every other villain in this story felt like
there need to be a villain.
no. They felt like they were just a servant of someone else.
That's true.
Even like
Yeah,
the
true.
main villain in the third movie, like the girl. She just goes around. She's just like the messenger. Like she's not like really evil in her own right. And even though the Marquis isn't technically above the high table, they gave him full permissions to do whatever
Yeah.
he wants. He's kind of
Well,
to the
that-
side of the table.
Yeah, well,
where
that's the thing about the Marquis is, I mean, he's the epitome of the high table let off its leash. Like
Exactly,
this is what they can do. You see him basically kill everybody at the Osaka
he's the
Continental.
first villain where he's the boss. He can do whatever he wants. The high table, technically, like even though they are his boss,
They don't care what he does.
The high
they
table
gave him
just-
full permissions to do whatever.
They just let him off the leash.
Exactly.
Basically.
Like he's like a rabid dog.
Yeah, his job is to stop John Wick.
Again, he's a rabid dog looking for John. He doesn't care about anything else. That's the only thing, and he will destroy anything to get like again. He just like downs continental hotels like they're nothing. He just doesn't care.
Yeah, because you have to keep in mind the one in Japan too. I believe got like they get
Yeah,
they
the
get
Osaka
destroyed. I mean,
one, you basically see everyone get killed.
everyone gets killed, but they also get no. I don't.
No,
think
we
get blown up.
never see. We only see the New York one get blown up.
You guys want to talk about all those like fight scenes, like the opening ones in like Japan and stuff like that.
I mean, we should probably go over the Japan stuff. In the Osaka parts, I personally, for me, I think that was some of the best combat in the movie because you get to see a lot of like, I don't know, it's unusual. You see a lot of the Yakuza there using bows and arrows and swords and stuff. Like you get a lot more physical, like I guess hand-to-hand combat type stuff in that scene. I really like it for that.
Well, it was so cool watching these like people using bows and swords and stuff like that hold their own against people with modern day like top of the line like pistols. And keep in mind they also had bulletproof jackets too.
Yep. Yeah, I remember because you get to see him kind of using it as a shield the way John does, where he pulls it up over
Okay,
his
I have to be
face.
honest. That is one of my favorite things in this entire show is how John would just like lift up his suit jacket to be as his shield against
be a
bullets.
shield.
And every
So
time
cool.
he takes it off, all the bullets just fall off. It's
Oh
so
yeah, the
cool.
scene where he takes his jacket off and all the shotgun pellets fall out of it in the end.
It's so cool. And also, the Osaka scene is where there's that viral clip where the guy falls down the stairs.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
like the
yeah.
stuntman.
The stunt guy. It's like my man's breaking his neck for this movie.
Literally, he literally fell down a whole escalator for that.
You see him land on his neck like
Yeah.
multiple times.
Those stunt actors are well trained. They don't get paid enough.
They really don't. There should be like a
Well,
category for
again,
best
the director's a
stuntman
stunt
or
guy.
something.
He knew who to hire.
I believe. Are you talking about Oscars? I believe there is
Yeah.
a best stuntman Oscars.
There's
isn't
not.
there?
There's
There's
not.
not.
There isn't? There
ought-
should be.
Oh, there really ought to be. I thought there was.
If there is, that's one of the ones they present in like the previous thing, in like the day before, in the ceremony before, not in the actual. Like,
Man, that kind of sucks.
That's stupid. Some men do so much for not just action movies, just movies. Period.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Stuntmen honestly don't get enough credit for how much like work they
really
put
don't.
into it.
they put in so. I mean, they put blood, sweat, and tears into that movie. Stuntmen are the ones that get their bones broken and get messed up and put in the hospital and stuff. and they don't get paid.
Yeah, there is
more than the actors. Like
there is no category for stuntmen at the Oscars.
Wow.
Well, I know that for the last one, Halle Berry, I think, broke 3 ribs.
Oh, I bet.
Like, while
she
shooting
did her own.
the movie.
She did her own stunts.
Yeah, she did. She did
Good
her own
for
stunts.
Just like Keanu.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Oh, she went
I
through.
know Keanu doesn't do everything in that movie, but he does a lot of it. Yeah, he does.
Oh, no, he did like almost all of it in the John Wick movies. So.
I know all the driving stunts and stuff he does.
It's similar to Tom Cruise in the Mission Impossible movies, where he'll just do everything himself, with the exception of a couple things. Pretty much does everything.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess you don't really think about it, but it definitely carries across for the continuity. Like, John feels like a much more authentic protagonist than most movies.
That's true, because the actor can.
Honestly,
the actor can take a fucking beating. I mean, what do you want me to say?
That's the nice thing about John Wick, is that you can almost imprint yourself onto him, because he's almost like a blank state. Again, that's why I feel like John Wick is just video games the movie. It is the best video game adaptation of movie, because it is literally, it's just a video game. He's the main character. He doesn't speak much. He just goes around, destroys everyone.
Well, I mean, John is a man of action, not a man of words.
Exactly.
No, John is a man of focus.
And sheer determination.
Focus and sheer will and determination.
Exactly.
That's Jonathan Wick for you.
Anyone can imprint themselves onto John, because he doesn't have a personality you got to push out of the way. He's just like, yeah.
Or he does.
It's
he
simple.
does, but he's like quiet. And
exactly.
No. It's not that. It's that John does. John, all he does is he does. You know what I mean?
That's my favorite part.
It's all action. That's all you get from him.
That's one of my favorite parts in the third film, is like the Bowery. Lawrence Fishburne goes, John, you upset? You pissed off that they did all this stuff?
He goes,
to you?
I'm feeling pissed off. How about you?
He just looks up at him. Yeah. And honestly, that's the
end of the movie.
That's
honestly,
the end of the movie. It's such a great ending too.
I love the end of this movie. The ending of the third movie might be the best one, though.
That's
the
true.
fact that he just looks up. You mad? I'm pissed off, John. How are you?
And then literally all he says is yeah. And somehow that's like
and that's how this movie and that's how this movie starts too. He comes in while John's punching the bag and he goes, "You ready, John?" Yeah. And then it's just a cut to Arabia where he's chasing the guys on the horses.
Did you know originally that John Wick had double the amount of dialogue in this film and Keanu cut it all out?
Keanu cut it? Really?
Keanu, he made the conscious decision to cut half of his dialogue in this film.
Well, because
Good for him.
Keanu was actually the producer on this film, and I think the third one too.
Yes. The second two are produced by him.
Yes. Well, he's one of the producers.
So 3 of the 4 movies he was a producer.
I think two of the 4. I don't think he's producer on the second one.
2 of the 4?
He's not producer on the first 2, but he is on the second 2. I'm guessing he's a producer on Ballerina as well.
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Even if John's not in it, would make sense for
I think
him
we
to
should
be
talk
in.
about the ending. It's kind of like the big elephant in the room that we haven't discussed
I don't
yet.
know, though. Like,
we have to
should
talk about
we?
it. Yes,
Just
we
in
have to
case.
talk about
I don't
it.
know, but
we
that,
can't not mention it.
John dies.
Yeah, but everyone knows that already. It's like, the question is, do we believe that?
I do.
It is. They said they purposely left it ambiguous for you to decide whether or not he dies.
I think
because in the end the dog goes off. There's like the dog.
Oh yeah, King and the dog are together at the end.
No, but I think if you look in the very background, like the wide shot, I think the dog like goes off into the corner.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't.
It's
really
like
pay
kind of like signaling that like John's still there.
It's
ambiguous. It's purposely ambiguous because they want to leave the room open in case they ever want to do it.
I mean, it's ambiguous, but I think that it puts the perfect little bow on top because I mean, there's the scene where he's in the speedboat with them, and then he gets out and he's like, "Loving husband. That's what I want on my headstone." And then the end.
Dude, that hit me
the
when
end,
you said that.
I know, because you see it and it's like, damn, that's good. And then you see it at the end. You see John, loving husband, right next to Helen.
Well, it's just kind of
right
funny
next to Helen Wick.
Because you hear
That's his wife's name, right?
Helen.
You hear the Bowery's like, mine goes, long live the king. And then Vincent's like, humble. That's pretty humble, ain't it?
He goes very humble.
And John's just like, all I want is loving husband. I don't care about anything else. That's all I want in my head. So.
Because that goes back to the conversation that John has with Winston, where it's like where Winston's like, John, like you're so focused on this revenge plot. It's like, what is the man you want to be remembered as? You know. And that's where the headstone comes into play.
Or what's after it.
And he's like, really, because the only reason that John is still living at this point is for the memory of his wife. Winston's the one that basically sells him on that, is that John is like, He's like, John, you can't be on this suicide mission. You have to live
But he
to
doesn't
remember your
that's
wife.
the thing. I think that's part of the reason John's such an effective character is that pretty much, with the exception in the first film where he has a very clear-cut goal, movies 2 through 4, his only goal is to live. He doesn't really care if he dies. He doesn't have any incentive to live necessarily.
Well, yeah, John has no incentive to live until the third movie, or where Winston finally explains to him. Well, not finally explains, but he tells him, he's like, you need to live to remember your wife. You know, you don't need to die to be with her. You need to live to carry on her memory. And I feel like that's the biggest change that John goes through. And I feel like that's part of what makes him such a relatable protagonist, is that he draws from like the rawest human emotion. Like the most uncontrollable thing in the world is love. And that's where all of his need for revenge and everything through this whole franchise has come from. I
think it's really powerful that the last word he says before he dies is just Helen.
Yeah.
And like, even though it's kind of cheap, like, I honestly, if you had just told me that there's like going to be a bunch of flashbacks to his wife and them being loving, like, if you had told me that without seeing it, I would have been like, oh, that's kind of cheesy. That's kind of like whatever. But they do it at very specific moments, and that it never feels out of place. And that, because they do it like throughout all 4 films.
Yeah, well, and I mean, in those movies, it's only kind of in John's downtime. Like, it's only in his moments of silence.
Well, it's when he's reflecting.
And that's when you would see it, you know? It's when he's not focused on killing the bad guys or running away or escaping or surviving. That's where his mind goes when that's not the priority, is his wife and remembering her.
Well, you also have to think, too, like, John, like, does not have, like, a lot of like downtime, and the amount of people that he's killed to like remember his wife, and they're not even like these big drawn out memories. Like, I remember before like he'd keel over and dies, he just remembers, and it's just like them on the beach or something like that, or he's like kissing her and stuff, and it's like not even like 10 seconds, and he just says her name and he passes. But it just shows like what John has, like, this is why he keeps doing this, and why he goes through so many bad guys and kills the Marquis and stuff like that. So he, just for this memory, so there's like that final like payoff. And us as why it doesn't come off as cheesy and almost rewarding to the audience is because we feel that payoff.
Yeah.
Just like how John does.
And I mean, and to any extent, like, John's emotions that you, like, not that they're shown super openly, but the emotions that John experiences during the movie are relatable.
For sure.
Because, I mean, I hope not to ostracize anyone here, but every human person knows what love feels like, and that's the only thing that drives John, is like, ultimately, it's not revenge, it's love, and it's the love for his wife who passed away that drives him, because his chance to mourn was taken from him.
Well, it was also his chance at a normal life, too.
Yeah, his only hope at being not this monster that he is was taken, you know?
I think it's important to note that there's all these secondary reasons that can be attributed to why he's doing this, like, you know, proving the system wrong, like fighting against the man, like fighting against the high table and their rules, and like proving that you can escape. It's like proving that you can, for one, get out of the life, proving that, two, you don't have to follow the rules and they're not top dog and that all these rules are like made up. But even though those are all reasons you could in theory attribute to what he's doing, he doesn't care about any of that. Like, if you, like,
not at all.
He, like, you ask him in the films, and he's like, "Why are you doing this?" Because of his wife. Like, even though everything I just said still technically is true, and he is doing those things, that's not the reason he's doing those things. Those are just byproducts of what he's doing.
Yeah, I'm not even sure I'd call them byproducts. It's more like an excuse.
Yeah, but it's more just like, even though those could have been those are all valid reasons he could have been doing these things for. It just doesn't matter to him, which I think makes him such a more interesting character, because it in a way he's just like, yeah, like, that might be the reason Winston's doing it. That might be the reason that Bowery's doing it. Like, they have specific grudges against the high table.
They also have specific things to gain too, right?
Exactly. John has nothing to gain. The only thing he has to gain is like his freedom, so he won't be hunted.
Well, and I think that on a deeper level, his freedom is more than that. Because his freedom isn't just the high table no longer hunting him. His freedom is him being the man that his wife wanted him to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, one that's not...
Like that. Like, the only other time he was free was when he was married to Helen. So him earning his freedom is like... That is him living for her, because once he kills the whole Russian mob in the first movie, he's in. He's back in. You can't.
Yeah.
You don't just forget about that and go back to living in your house, and that's shown at the first 30 minutes of the second movie.
And think of that also shown too when he kind of spares the blind guy.
Yeah.
Too, like he doesn't shoot also to kill the Marquis, but I think it's something that I think he was also something about his wife too. If this was John back in the life, he totally could have just popped him right there.
Yeah.
But
well, I don't know that it relates to his wife. It's more that you come to an understanding that they come to in the scene where they fight up the stairs together.
That's so cool.
It's like they don't want to kill each other, and they're friends. They're old friends.
They have respect for each other too.
And the blind guy comes up to him, and he picks him up when he gets kicked all the way down the stairs, and he's like, "John, how long do we have until sunrise?" And John's like, "Oh, about 3 minutes." And he goes, "I need you to make it to the top of those stairs, John."
Yeah, it was.
And
really
that's
cool.
it. And then they fight their way up the stairs, and it's perfect because, and it also shows that John has other things to live for than his wife. There's other good friends, but his main incentive is her.
I got 2 points to make. One, this kind of goes into the video game feel of these movies, and the fact that John knows every single person, and they all know him, but they never explain it, which I think is awesome. Where they all just go John, and then he'll just say their name, and then immediately you can see an understanding between the two. Any character John interacts with, I don't think there was a single character in any of the 4 films that John didn't know.
Yeah.
Or they didn't know him.
Honestly,
Exactly.
What
they all knew him. Every single person.
He's a video game character.
You know what it reminded me of?
What?
Neither of you are gonna get this, but Fallout New Vegas. So Fallout New Vegas, you get killed, and then you wake up and everybody knows you as the guy that the robot dug up in Good Springs. And it's just funny because John Wick is the same guy, where it's he gets that same feel where no matter who he comes up to, even if he doesn't know them, they're like, "Oh, you're John Wick."
That kind of reminds me of what's it called?
You're the boogeyman.
There's a video game that reminds me of
Baba
it.
Yaga.
The Baba Yaga.
It kind of reminds me of the Shadow games, Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War. Everyone just knows the grave.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I wouldn't say that everyone knows Celebrimbor.
There are a ton of video
everyone
games
does.
where this
There's
rule
1,000
applies.
examples for sure.
And that's why that attributes to the feeling like a video game, because he knows every single person, and they never have to explain it. You just, as the viewer, know immediately that
he
there's
knows him?
backstory.
They
Hold
know
on,
him.
hold on. Everybody, John Wick he's the Fortnite guy. He's a
you're
video game
right.
character. Everybody knows John Wick. He's the season 3 Fortnite guy.
He was in Fortnite before they actually added his skin to Fortnite.
No.
It's so funny.
I think it's so funny that they have a John Wick and a The Reaper skin, and they're the
So
same.
They're both the same
They're
thing.
both John Wick.
And my
So
second
funny.
point is, I want to talk about the blind guy, because he is so cool.
He
And the
was so
things they're
cool.
able to do with it was very, again, similar to Rogue One, because he plays another
I'm
blind
so
guy.
happy that they picked the same actor as Rogue One to play the blind guy in that movie.
It is.
Because he fits the same aesthetic in this movie, you know what I mean? He fills the same exact role as the monk does in Rogue One in his own way. It's
But the action's way better.
well, it's not that the action's way better.
It's different.
Because I would argue that he has some of the best action scenes in Star Wars Rogue One.
No, he definitely does. But I'm saying, it's
But
like,
in this movie,
it adds.
it's not like he's the same character, but he gets the same exact kind of vibe to him, you know?
No, I know what you're saying. I'm saying it. For one, it adds diversity to the lineup of assassins that we've seen up until this point, and it lets them do very specific, creative things with the shots.
yeah.
And then the fight scene, especially the way he just runs around and starts hitting everything to the side of him, just so we can understand the
I
environment
liked it when he
he's
put
in.
the little doorbells or
That's
whatever.
what I was about to say.
That was the freaking
That was-
coolest thing, because I was like, he's putting those things up. Is he putting bombs up or stuff? In the
No, it's so he can hear where they are.
until he hears something, and then he just what is it? I forget. What was
He uses the cane sword.
no, I know he uses the cane sword. It's just they run by and he just
Oh, they run
is
by
there.
and they ding, and he knows right where they are. And he
I think it's
shoots
so
them.
cool when you see him just point the gun over his head, and he's just he has no idea where they are technically.
Well, I like that
or he's
because
just shooting
it,
in the general direction.
Because especially that scene where he's in the kitchen, he puts the doorbells up, and you're at first, like Jack said, you're like, what is he doing? I like it because it really accentuates his blindness, and it shows you that yes, he is very much blind. He cannot see these people, but he is still at John Wick's level of his combat skills. Without sight, he is just as effective because he has these creative ways of fighting his enemies, you know? Like, he outsmarts them instead of the way John does, where he's just more determined and more powerful. I feel bad that I don't know his name, but the blind... Kane.
His name
yes,
is
you're right,
Kane.
Yeah.
Kane. Kane is like he's John Wick, but he's the more clever, intuitive one because he needs to be, because he can't use his eyes. And I like that, and I like that scene where they fight together because it's like the culmination of their combined skills leading up to the finale, to the last battle.
Well, so also what this also shows when he goes and he puts all the bells up and stuff like that, it does two things. It forces you as the audience to be engaged, like, because you're looking at it and it's like, what is he doing? It also shows when he goes and he's taking out all these guys. This is a very intelligent character too. This isn't just like some assassin. It is a very smart character who is on a different level than like the other assassins, like in the rest of the movie, but also beforehand, because like he navigates the world differently than everyone else.
He
even
literally
John.
navigates the world differently.
Like I remember when John and him are fighting, it's like the museum or something, and he's like, John, are you dead? And then like he moves and the little tiniest bit of glass crunches, and then you're just right back into the action.
Yeah, and then the fight picks back up. I love that. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because that scene is one of my favorites between just the two of them, like when they're fighting, because, you know, it's like he asks, you know, like you said, John, are you dead? And he doesn't know. You can tell from the actor and his face and his body language that he can't tell if John is dead because he hasn't made any sound. Like, you know, he's been shooting at him for a couple minutes, but he doesn't actually know if John's dead or not until he makes a noise.
And you could also see that John in that scene too, he kind of hesitates because it's like, am I really gonna take advantage of my enemy like this?
That's the thing, is it's a very human scene, because you see it's like, oh, Kane very clearly has a weakness, you know? Like, this is his weakness, yet John still does not take advantage of that.
I think it's important to note, expanding upon the human element of this character, he is the only other assassin where we get to see his family. Excluding the other Yakuza guy.
Not just his family, but his reason to be doing what he's
exactly.
doing.
So he has a very specific... He was also the... Again, excluding the other Yakuza guy, because he became like a manager of the hotel. That's a little different.
Yeah,
but in terms of just
his character's different.
In terms of being a standard like assassin for the high table, he's the only other character where we actually see his reasoning, and he also was retired. Again,
That's true.
It's important to note that when he went to the Marquis, he was retired. He's the only other assassin in the entire all four movies that we see that in a way got out, even though he technically wasn't out. He was still like semi-retired.
Well, he was out like John was, where he's like, oh, I have a marker, like, you owe me, you know? Not that it was the same exact thing with Kane, but it was similar.
The only reason he ever came back is because the Marquis was like, yeah, even though you're out, I know where your daughter is, so you're not really out.
Well, I think that's part of what makes this movie so good, is that the Marquis provides the same kind of on-screen presence that John does as a counter to him, but Kane is a literal counter to John, whereas he is at a disadvantage but still just as strong because he has the same reason to fight. Not the exact same, but it's love that is the reason for him to do what he does.
You're right in that it's love that's the same thing. However, unlike John, he's fighting because his daughter's still alive.
Yeah.
While John is fighting because his wife is dead and he's fighting for her memory. It's not the same thing.
Because he's the one to remember her, whereas Kane is more like, I don't want my daughter to be killed by these people. John, please win and kill this guy so that I'm also free.
That's part of the reason I think John is hesitant to really go all out and attack Kane, because John understands that in terms of like looking at both of their situations objectively, Kane has a lot more to live for than John does, than he does.
Well, also he can understand on an emotional level too.
Exactly, because they already said they were friends. I love this scene in the church where they're both standing there, all the candles are lit, and they're just talking as friends. It's a very quiet moment. There's not that many quiet moments in this film, but that's one of them. And I think that makes it really impactful.
The silence is probably the heaviest part of this movie.
Where he's
the few scenes where it's just words, no action, no any kind of conflict, just two people talking one-to-one. It's very rare, but it is
it's that much more
strongest
impactful
part of the movie.
I totally agree. And he's also just like, yeah, I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, well, because they know they have to duel. Regardless of if they fight or not, they have to duel each other like gentlemen, because that's the rule.
That's the rule.
And I love the way it ends. I mean, now that we're here, I feel like we've kind of covered, not the whole movie. I mean, it's a 3-hour movie, but I feel like we've gone over the cliff notes of most of it and the most important stuff and our favorite parts. That ending, man, the duel, like,
It was so good.
it's so good because you watch them and it's like, as they shoot, they're shooting each other in the same places. Like, they both shoot each other in the same spot on the arm.
Despite him being
blind, they both are that aware of each other's presence. It's like, you know they don't want to hurt each other. And then you get to the end and John gets shot the third time. And part of me in my heart knew, I was like, I know John didn't fire back, because that was a common thing, like, out of respect in duels back when duels were like an actual way of resolving problems. I was like, there's no way that John shot, because he can't kill Kane, because Kane has a very valid reason to live. Like, he still wears that locket even though he can't even see his daughter. He doesn't even know what she looks like, but he still wears it because he knows that it's her in there.
I also think the ending of the duel too, it really, because I think you go in and you just think either one man's going to leave, John is invincible, he's going to murk this other guy, or you're going to think to yourself, John's totally going to die. There's no way. He's jumped out of buildings, he's been shot at, he's all this stuff, he's weak and vulnerable now. But it did for some reason, even though I had these preconceptions in my head about how it was going to play out, I still felt the tension. It was like, I really don't know how this is going to end, and how John didn't shoot and kills the Marquis and stuff. That really subverted my expectations.
Yeah,
I was like, wow, I did not expect that.
Because John makes the ultimate play. I mean, because honestly, like, I wasn't even ready for it in the movie, but because John plays off the Marquis' ego. He's like, I know that the Marquis wants to be the one to finish me. I'm going to sneak past him. I'm going to make him think he won because he didn't.
While I agree with both of your points, I think the scene we're talking about where he does shoot him because the Marquis comes over and takes the gun, I think that's one of the few things that people are actually criticizing about the movie, and how just kind of like easily it kind of wraps up because the Marquis takes the gun and then he's like, oh yeah, I'm just going to shoot you. I'm not saying I agree with that perspective, but I think that is one of the few criticisms that are being kind of lauded at the movie, and how kind of easily it wraps up.
I don't know, though, because the Marquis throughout the whole movie, it's shown to you that he has this feeling that he's invincible. He sits at the high table. He's this very high-ranking member of this criminal underworld. Like, he knows he can't be killed, and then he's like, oh, John lost the duel. And then he goes, I want the coup de grace. I want the bullet that kills John Wick. I want to go over and finally finish him and execute him. And that's when Winston goes, you arrogant bastard. He didn't shoot.
It's important because, remember, in the previous scene between Winston and the Marquis, Winston is like, he plays on his ego. You could be the man that kills John Wick and restores order to the high table. And he plays on, he's like, you might not agree. Even the Marquis is like, this whole like tradition and like duels. He's like, this is all stupid. It's all just for old, antiquated people.
Yeah. Well, he says something like that. He's like, I'm done with the old ways. This is a new generation.
But Winston is extreme. It shows how calculating Winston is. Is that he's very smart. He plays in his ego. It's like, despite all that, you could mark your place in history by being the one known as killing the Baba Yaga. You could be that person. You
killed the boogeyman. Like, you did it. You'll be this larger than life figure.
That will basically immortalize you.
The other thing that I see too with like the Marquis, he's like powerful. He's talking down to people the whole movie, right? When John is going like killing everyone like in France and stuff the day before the duel, right up until the duel, you can see he's breaking his phone. He's pacing. He's afraid. So now the fact that we got John right here, I'm gonna take this and
I got two quick points to make before we wrap up. One is with Kane. I think we didn't mention this. I think it's extremely important to mention that he chose to have his eyes removed as a way of getting out.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't say, because he's like, what is it? Nobody's talking to him, and he's like, oh, they took your eyes, and he goes, nobody took them. I gave them up.
Exactly. I think it's very important to note that he purposely gave them up.
Well, I mean that
as a way of getting out.
That almost puts him on the same level as John. Whereas you see John take his finger in the third movie. It's like, this is somebody else that to get out was willing to give something up. Like, it's not somebody that just got lucky, got
John
out.
didn't really give
he
anything
gave it up. Well,
you know.
I mean,
I think it's also important we haven't
consequences, AJ.
Yeah, consequences. We haven't talked the other character. We haven't talked about Nobody, and I think that's important to note is that while I really like his character, he's very cool. I love seeing the dog. He's just not that important to the film. Remove him from the film, what really changes?
No.
Nothing.
The thing is, though, it's like nothing really changes without him there, but him being there provides this tension because it's like he definitely is one of the only assassins capable of killing John Wick.
I don't actually think he is capable of killing John
I think
Wick.
he is, but
I
the
disagree.
whole time he's like, he's playing this cat and mouse game with the Frenchman, and they're doing this back and forth thing.
I don't think he detracts from the film in any
No,
way. I really like him.
That's the
but
thing is that he doesn't.
I think you could remove him and nothing would change fundamentally.
Not that different, but I do love the scene where John kills the guy that's about to kill his dog, even though he has the opportunity to kill Nobody, because it's of personal significance to him. He chooses to kill the marquee guy that's about to kill Nobody's dog, and that's what makes them friends.
Yeah.
Is that because you see it? I mean, in his face, in his eyes, you can see when John kills the marquee second in command instead of Nobody. He's like,
the
he's
Latino
like,
guy.
He's like, what the hell? Like, he's like, why did he just kill that guy that was about to kill my dog instead of me? Like, he had the advantage.
Shout out to the second in command, like the Latino guy. He's awesome. He's
Is.
such an intimidating second in command. And I also want to mention...
And he gets such a fitting death when he finally he's about to kill that German Shepherd, and John's about to kill Nobody, and then he's like,
you shot at my dog.
I know, and then he's like, I can't have it happen to this guy like it happened to me,
The other thing I want to talk about is what do you guys think about the Klaus fight? Because
it's fantastic.
I
so
absolutely
good.
love that fight, even though it doesn't really have that much story importance. It's so cool.
It's so cool watching him just beat the hell out of this fat guy that like keeps surviving, and then he falls
Have
all
you
the way
seen the
down.
actor who plays him?
It just lands right on top
He
of
ran
his
on
head.
top of his head. That was such a cool kill.
Have you seen the actor who plays Klaus?
No.
Or it wasn't.
He looks nothing like him. They turned him into a different person.
I'll have to look him up after this.
I think you're thinking of a different person. Klaus is the one guy that comes.
He's the fat guy with the gold teeth.
No, that's not Klaus. That's someone
Is that
else.
not his name? What's his name?
No,
Klaus is the guy with all the tattoos.
With all
You're right,
tattoos.
you're
Because he goes,
thinking
I'm Klaus.
He goes like,
You're right.
That's right.
I got him mixed up. You're right.
No, you're fine. But
I almost forgot about the best character. I'm Klaus.
we all
Klaus
know
will
who
take
you're
you
talking
to him.
about. Though.
I'm Klaus, and then he knocks out John.
His death was so cool, and that whole like scene, that kind of was like, in the first movie how there's a nightclub scene. That was like it turned up to like 11.
No, it was like the second.
It was pretty funny in the nightclub scene and how like John Wick was murdering all these people, and even though you had to suspend your disbelief a little bit, is that none of the people run away. They'll just kind of watch.
It's no. You do see them run away. I paid very close attention to that.
No,
and
they do, but after a while.
Well,
for a while they don't.
Well, at first people are more surprised, but then you see people actually start screaming and running when people start.
Again, that's just a point
killed.
in the movie where you have to suspend your disbelief because it's a way cooler to watch him fight in a circle of people than it is without.
That's true.
That's true.
It doesn't make any logical sense because logically they would all run away immediately, but like I don't care because it doesn't matter.
Also, just the way it was shot and like all the colors going off in the water.
I love the water.
Dripping.
The water
It's
in
so
the
cool.
background
Oh
is so
my
cool.
gosh!
And the very
last, really
there's
so
one last
good.
thing I want to touch on before we end. Is that
so pretty.
The ending, like the moment he's done when he kills the Marquis and he just goes and sits down. I think it's extremely powerful, but I wasn't ready for it to end at that point in time.
Yeah, it ends so suddenly.
It ends so suddenly, and then he's like dead, and you're just. And while I appreciate being caught off guard by that, part of me was also just like, I wish I had a little more time to digest that death.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, I don't know. I kind of liked it because like.
That's really the only problem I had with the film. Was at the very end, I was just like, I wish I had a little more time. Because it felt so abrupt to me.
Well, I think it makes John more human or like more mortal because most action, most action movie heroes and just heroes or protagonists, they can take a ton of bullets, a ton of punches and stuff like that. But John, all it took for him to go down was 3 well-placed shots. You know, and for his death to be that sudden, it makes sense. And also the whole time, especially through the second half of the movie and just all the action, I thought in my heart, there's no way this man's gonna. There's no way he's walking away from this. All these people he's killed, all the bullets he's taken.
Well,
even if he hasn't gotten physically shot, when you get hit with You're gonna say
No,
something, AJ?
finish your thought.
Oh yeah. You know, just like the force of getting shot, like hurts. It can like break ribs and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And him, especially to me, when he fell out of the apartment all the way on top of the car, I was like, "There's no way that he's gonna get up." And then he gets up, and then he goes to the duel, and there's like, you know, I saw him pass away. I was like, "Really?" And I was at first, but I think it's very fitting because it just tells about how all the people he's killed, the whole spree. John, at the end of the day, is just a mortal man.
Yeah, he's still a human.
Yeah. The reason I rose my hand is because I have something to direct off of that, and much is that I wanted to say it. Is that two things? One, the scene where he falls down the stairs is hilarious because he's always at the top and then just falls down.
He just gets kicked forever. And that shows his humanity, though. I mean, you see him sitting there at the bottom, and you can see it in his face. He's like, "Bro, I'm never gonna make it back up there."
Never.
He literally goes out. It's like a whole minute.
The second point I want to make is that throughout the franchise, this happens in all 4 movies, there are so many instances where John would have died. He would have died. There would have been an end of the movie. Everything would have been over, except he had friends and someone else who got him out. This starts in the first movie with Willem Dafoe shooting when he's like getting like when he's like they're choking him with the bag with like the plastic bag over his head. That is like the first main instance where you notice that, but there's again the Bowery saving him multiple times.
Multiple times
at the end when he falls off the building. There are so many instances where
you never forget the king, man.
You never forget. Long live the king.
Long live the king, for real.
You can't kill him, even though you slice him up. It doesn't matter. He's fine.
Still not dead.
There's so many instances where he could have died, or he should have died, really, but he has friends, and that's part of the reason it makes him feel so human is that he's not. Even though he is basically like this video game character that's unstoppable, doesn't say much, he has friends. He has genuine human connections with the people, and that they save them. It's not just him brute forcing his way out of every situation. Sometimes he just has friends that help him out.
I mean, everybody needs help sometimes, you know?
Exactly.
And John's no exception. He's human.
And that makes it so much more realistic. It's not like he magically saves himself out of every situation.
I think I have a thought to sum this up. That is why John is the best... Not only the best action movie, but one of the best protagonists in movies, because he is so very human. You see him stitching his own wounds shut. You see him at his weakest when he can barely fight, and he's basically under the protection of somebody else. Like, John is not this unstoppable killing machine with unlimited health upgrades and medkits and stuff where he can just always feel better. It's like the people help him get there. You know? That's the only way he can go the distance. He can't do it all alone, and the other characters make that very clear.
Yeah. If I were to sum up this movie in one sentence, it is such is life.
Such is life.
Such as life. I don't know. In my opinion, I actually just call it action movie porn. That's what it
is. Yeah, basically. But yeah. Well, if you listened this far, thank you for listening. We really enjoyed doing this episode.
Big ups to my listeners. Everybody who listened this far, big ups to you. You're a real G. You're a handsome. You are one handsome motherfucker. I hope you know that. And I don't take censorship lightly. AJ's not even going to censor this episode. He told me so. And that's why I'm telling you that's how it is. You're one beautiful handsome son of a bitch. And I hope you have a good day.
Hell yeah.
Any other final thoughts, fellas?
We'll see.
You also have a cute smile and dimples on your cheeks.
Not everyone.
Thanks, Jack. All right.
You still have a beautiful smile, though. Let's see those pearly whites, folks, and a thumbs up button for the channel.
All of you, make sure you like, subscribe, everything like that. And you all know the tradition around here.
If you like the videos. If you didn't like it, leave a thumbs down. I don't care. I'll hate on you privately.
Hate on the channel publicly.
Thanks, Jack.
Here's the thing. Yeah, like, subscribe, leave a hate comment. You know the drill here.
Leave
also,
hate, but leave
you know
hate.
Every guest gets a final word.
What if that guy that left the hate comment was actually just our biggest fan?
That'd be so.
And he just hates on all the videos because we tell him to.
That would be hilarious.
Guys, why are you being so mean?
All right, now giving it to Jack. Giving it over to Jack. Everyone knows.
Jack,
one last word.
We're at 59 minutes. You got 1 minute.
Silence.
We need
for
a
Jack.
final word out of you.
Let's go.
To sum up this whole episode, this whole time on here, the John Wick franchise.
You know the word to do.
You know the rule. No pressure. A lot of pressure, though. It's the last word of the episode. Let's hear it.
There's
Jack,
only one word that you can do.
28 seconds counting down now.
Go.
Yeah.